WrestleMania 20 was a pretty cathartic thing for me. I had just been fired in February of 2006. WrestleMania had come full circle, 20 years, back in the Garden, where pretty much, in my mind, my career kind of started with Hulk winning the belt in '84. That's when I started saying, I'm going to do this. So from '84 to 2006, for 20 years, in those 20 years, I succeeded at my dream of becoming a wrestler. Won belts, U.S. title and tag belts in both groups, WCW and WWF, and had my career with WWE and being fired. It felt very final for me. It felt like I'd come full circle. It felt like that. It felt right for me to end it there. And as much as I think Vince mistreated me in WWE, and God knows what factors led to the firing, I did backstage, and I have a picture too. But after it was all over, after WrestleMania 20 was done, I went to the room where Vince and Stephanie and Linda was there. I'm trying to remember. Shane was there too. All four of them, and I said, I don't know if you guys know, but I got fired. There's a good chance you did. I said, but and I just want to thank you guys, and that was heartfelt. And some might think it's hypocritical of a lot of things I've said since then, and a lot of things I've done since then. But I'll never take that back that I thanked him. He did. He let my dreams come true. Vince, he didn't have to hire me. He didn't have to give me the U.S. title. Didn't have to give me the WWE tag titles. More than anything, and those were big goals. Winning belts is big. It shows that the company, it's a work because every belt is given to you, whatever, but it shows the company's behind you to some extent when they put a strap on there. So it does mean something. And more than anything, working in Garden, I got to work in Madison Square Garden. I grew up going there. I was there when Hulk won it. So when I got to work, I worked Jeff Hardy in there. So it was really cool. Those were some huge streams, and it wouldn't have came true without Vince. So I don't mind that I thanked him. And there was even a sign in the crowd. Some guy had up a huge one that said, "Thanks, Vince." If you watch the paper, you can see it. As soon as the show was over and the confetti was falling and Eddie and Chris were in the ring, which is just a great moment. And I'm sitting there watching. These are guys I think should have the belt at WrestleMania. It just felt perfect. I ran out there and I took a picture with the guy. I had the "Thanks, Vince." So I had a picture that the confetti falling and me and this guy holding the "Thanks, Vince" sign. I do appreciate that I got that opportunity. Doesn't mean he's not a douchebag. Doesn't mean he's not a scumbag and two-faced and evil. I do believe he, in many ways, an evil guy. But he did do something nice for me, and I don't feel two-faced for thanking him for giving me that opportunity. I remember being in the gorilla position, and as Vince is cutting his promo and saying, "Yeah, I'll sign the papers when Ted Turner shows up at WrestleMania and kisses my ass," I looked at Terry Taylor and he went, Terry had no idea.
Right.
None of us knew if that was a shoot or not. And I'm thinking, that's why they're located where they are. They're going to fucking cut this promo and get the fuck out of here. And this is a swerve, and they're going to fuck us all over. They're fucking Ted Turner, they're fucking WCW. And none of us knew what was real and what wasn't at that point. That's why it was such a powerful angle. For Vince to drop the ball on that, we could sit here for fucking 10 hours saying how it could have been done better, how his fucking ego got in the way, how he fucked up the biggest angle in wrestling history. For anyone to sit there and say, and obviously I have issues with Vince,
right.
For anyone to say he's a fucking genius after XFL, World Bodybuilding Federation, ICO Pro, the dropping of the ball, the destroying of wrestling in general, it's dumbfounding. He's made fucking fuck up after fuck up after fuck up. He's somewhat successful despite himself.
Right. Do you feel he did a WCW thing just because he didn't want to put over the company? He just wanted...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was consciously done, but his ego gets in the way, and he said, "Fuck him."
Right.
I also happened to be in a fucking I got lucky, man. I got hungry later in the day. I was in the catering when there was somewhat of a symbol. It was supposed to be production people only, and I didn't see that sign on the door. The catering hall was huge, so I'm sitting there eating, not realizing. And there was the symbolic handing over. David Crockett, got up and said, "Everyone, work your ass off tonight. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen, but work your ass off." And I want to, officially announce that Vince McMahon is taking this company. And Shane got up, and man, there was almost not a dry eye in the fucking catering place. And to look around and realize that Vince was pretty much putting all these people out of work, I was like, that's when I started realizing Shane can say whatever he wants. Anyone who wants an opportunity is going to be good for him. They put a lot of people out of business that day. They put a lot of people on the street that day as far as they had a job and now they don't.
How did you find out about yourself?
Well, I called, you know,
Right.
I got the call from Johnny Ace on the way to the building.
But you were retained, right?
No. And that was another thing. Diana Myers, who is a lawyer for WCW, pretty much right after I got thrown off the cage, triple cage with match with Jarrett and Paige and Arquette. I had a match with Mike Awesome that night. And then the whole, you know, and that was a weird thing. Like, I felt with the triple cage, the fans were going to expect something weird, or probably, you know, just basically a big bump or something. So when I pitched that angle to Eric made it happen. And then later I found out that it was the building where Owen died. I said, maybe we shouldn't do it. And, you know, Eric said, yeah, whatever, you have good karma and nothing's going to happen. I'm like, no, it's not about that. It's about disrespect and stuff. It's like, at least ask Brett if it's all right. So Eric promised me he would ask Brett if it's all right for me to take the bump in that building. So I had a decent match with Mike Awesome. Crowd was really into it. Then I get thrown off the cage at the end of the night. Right after that, I had to renegotiate my contract. I went to Bischoff. He wasn't dealing with it anymore. Now, this Diana Myers, who's not a wrestling fan, was a lawyer and hated all the wrestlers because we were all making more money than her, and she was a lawyer. She fucking hated us, hated wrestling. And she was right under Brad Siegel, who was another scumbag. So I went to Bischoff. I'm like, I know you're not dealing with this anymore, but if you were me, how much would you ask for? He goes, if I was still in charge, you'd get $500,000 a year, especially after the match you had tonight and getting thrown off the cage and you worked your ass off for the company. You've been here forever. He's like, if they give you anything less than $500,000, they're slapping you in the face. So I went in, met with Diana Myers, who's a cunt, and I told him I was making $270 a year at this point. I think I asked for $350, $500, $650, based on what Eric told me.
Right.
So, average $500 over the 3 years. She said, I'm not even going to tell you what we're going to offer you because it would be insulting. I said, you telling me that is insulting.
Right.
I was like, don't tell me anything then. So they came back with a horrible plan, but the way they had it was, if this is the contract, they had a graph of how many dates you would work. These are how many years, first year, second year, third year. So up here, if you only work little dates in the first year, you hardly make anything. But this number down here is ridiculous, like $750,000. If after 3 years you work 200 and something dates, you're gonna make a ridiculous money.
Right.
That's the contract they give me. Knowing that these motherfuckers are cutting out all house shows and combining Nitro, and knowing it and asking me to sign this contract, it was fucking shady business. It was a scumbag move, and it's Diana Myers, who's a cunt, and Brad Siegel, who I think was working for Vince McMahon from inside to fuck up that company, because Bischoff's group, a year before it sold for $4 million or whatever the fuck Vince bought it for.
Offered you.
Yeah, $250 million, and fucking WCW said no, it's not enough. A year later, Brad accepts $4 fucking million. That's fucking, in my mind, that's fucking internal sabotage. And man, I heard a long time, once I got there and I heard Brad Siegel, someone told me that Brad Siegel in the 80s worked for Vince McMahon on the pay-per-view end of things. And that people feel that he had a relationship with Vince all the way through, and that he internally sabotaged that company. And man, if you look at the facts, man, I would not doubt it, man.
Has WWE ever stiff with you besides Owen?
Fucking Bob. Right after the 1, 2, 3 Kid match, early in that match, Kid had me do a thing where, that's Sean Waltman. I'm sure most people buy this to know that, but we did a thing where he would go for the tackle, right off the bat. We locked up. He went for the tackle, boom, but he took the bump. And then we did another thing. I left, and I hit him with a tackle, and I would fucking start flexing, trying to show personality.
Right.
And they liked that. So when I got to the back, they're like, finally, so that's what you gotta do, man. It's a good personality, good heel personality. They said, keep doing it. My next guy was Bob Holly. So Bob was giving me a shitload of offense, believe it or not. And Bob was just getting in. He was doing the Sparky Plug gimmick, and he was not happy, I don't think, with that.
Huh.
But he was, he was doing what he could to get over. So all I'm thinking is personality. So we did an opening spot, and then he was going to give me offense for 4 minutes, I think, which was weird back then. So, and then at the very end, I think he was going to let me miss the moonsault too. And then he was going to do his comeback, boom, boom, boom.
Right.
His finishing back then, he was doing the Macho Man elbow, top rope elbow. So, right off the bat, we do our opening spot, and finally I was going to cut him off, body slam him, and then that's when my offense would start. Well, as soon as I body slam him, I'm like, all right, personality. So I act like I'm driving up, with him right down there. And dude, I look down, and I see it in his face. He's like, motherfucker. And he rolls away. I'm like, oh, fuck. So he gets up in the car. I know it's coming to kick, so come in, kick, boom. He's like, come out for a close. Like, shoots me and I come out, dude. I knew it, man. That fucking thing. I know it's coming, but I was like, I gotta,
Right.
piss them off. I gotta take it. I put my dude. I had a sore throat literally for fucking 3 weeks.
Yeah,
for a clothesline, man. And he beat the fight. And that fucking elbow was so fucking stiff, dude. Brutal. But and he did that fucking thing too with the Campanelli or whatever his name was.
Yeah.
Tough enough, Matt.
Yeah.
Dude, I understand the aspect of paying your dues, and the Tough Enough kids, man, they got a good break, all of them, man. That's a good fucking lucky break they got. But man, there's ways to become a millionaire. You can work your ass off and earn $1 million, or you get lucky and hit the lottery. And I don't get mad at people who hit the lottery. Those fucking Tough Enough kids hit the lottery. For Bob to treat Matt the way he did, man, I just think it was wrong. I think it put a black mark on the business. I think it looked bad for a lot of people who were watching for the first time. And I just, I understand it's a tough business. It ain't chess, and fuck it. If you work a little snug, dude, I work snug. I don't give a fuck.
Right.
I'd rather work snug because it looks more real. Because I think back to fucking Night of Champions and being 4th row, and I hated seeing the space between the punch. So work snug. I don't give a fuck. But what he did to Matt was wrong.
A lot of people said that.
Not wrong.